Hey guys, tonight we slip beneath the stone floors of a medieval castle, down into a place where light doesn't exist, time doesn't move the way you expect it to, and you quickly realize you probably won't survive this. Not because anything dramatic happens right away, but because nothing does. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, go ahead and comment your location and local time. I always find it fascinating where in the world people are listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't remember falling. You don't remember being pushed, dragged, or led down here. What you remember is the cold. It's the first thing that greets you as awareness slowly returns. Not a sharp cold. Not the kind that shocks you awake, but a deep, creeping cold that feels like it's been there longer than you have settled into the stone, soaked into the air, waiting patiently. You shift slightly and immediately feel it. Hard, unforgiving. The ground beneath you is solid stone, uneven and damp, pressing into your side in ways your body doesn't quite know how to handle yet. You inhale slowly. The air feels wrong, heavy, thick, as if it hasn't moved properly in a very long time. In many medieval castles, dungeons were built below ground level, often with minimal ventilation. Airflow was limited, and moisture from the surrounding earth would seep through the walls, creating a damp, stale environment. Historians still argue whether this was intentional for punishment or simply a result of construction limitations, but the effect was the same. The space never truly felt alive. You blink. Once. Twice. Waiting for your eyes to adjust. They don't. At first you think maybe you just need more time. That familiar expectation that darkness fades if you're patient enough lingers in your mind. But this isn't that kind of darkness. This is complete. Absolute. You raise a hand slowly, bringing it toward your face. You don't see it. Not even a shadow. Just nothing. Your breath slows slightly. Not panic. Not yet. Just awareness. Because your brain is still trying to make sense of something it doesn't encounter often. True darkness. You shift again, more carefully this time, testing the limits of your space. Your hand brushes against stone. Rough, cold, close, closer than you expected. You move the other way. More stone, another wall. The realization settles in quietly. You're not in a large room, you're in something smaller, contained. A cell. You exhale slowly. The sound softer than you expect, as if the air itself absorbs it before it can travel far. There's a faint smell now that you notice it. Dampness, of course, but something else layered beneath it. Old, stale, not strong enough to identify clearly, but present enough that your mind keeps returning to it. A quirky thought drifts into your awareness, something oddly specific. In some medieval accounts, straw was scattered across dungeon floors, not for comfort, but simply to absorb moisture and waste. It wasn't replaced often. Historians still argue how regularly it was maintained, but most agree, not frequently. You shift slightly again, feeling something softer beneath you this time. Straw, or what's left of it. It doesn't help much. Just enough to remind you that someone, at some point, tried to make this space slightly more bearable. You pull your knees in a little closer, your body instinctively trying to conserve warmth, because the cold is settling deeper now, not just on your skin, but through it. You listen. At first, there's nothing, or at least it feels like nothing, but as your breathing steadies, as your body grows still, you begin to notice it. A faint sound. Irregular, soft. A drip. Water. Somewhere nearby. You tilt your head slightly, trying to locate it. Another drip. Same direction, same rhythm. It's not loud, but in a place this quiet, it becomes something to focus on. You follow it with your mind, letting the sound anchor you. Because right now, it's the only thing that feels consistent. Another breath. Slow, measured. You're not panicking, and that surprises you, because this is the kind of situation where panic feels expected. But instead, there's a strange calm, not comfort, but stillness, as if your body is choosing to conserve energy, rather than waste it on reactions that won't change anything. You shift your hand again, pressing lightly against the stone wall beside you. Solid, cold, unmoving. It doesn't respond, doesn't give. It simply exists, And in that moment, something becomes clear. This place doesn't care how you feel about it. It doesn't react. It doesn't change. It just is. And you're inside it. You adjust your posture slightly, settling into a position that feels less uncomfortable. Not comfortable, just manageable. Because already, your body is learning, adapting, finding small ways to exist within these conditions. The dripping continues, slow, steady, unchanging. You focus on it again, letting it fill the space where your thoughts might otherwise wander too far. Because thinking too far ahead right now doesn't help. You don't know how long you'll be here. You don't know what comes next. You don't even know what time it is. All you have is this moment, this space, this cold, this darkness. And as you sit there, your breathing steady, your body still, your senses slowly adjusting to the rhythm of this place, you begin to understand something important. Surviving this night isn't about escaping. It's not about fighting. It's about enduring. One moment at a time, one breath at a time. Because in a place where nothing changes, the only thing that can adapt is you. The darkness doesn't lift. You wait for it to soften, to thin out, to become something your eyes can slowly negotiate with. But it doesn't. It stays exactly as it was. Complete. Unmoving. And after a while, you realize something uncomfortable. It's not that your eyes haven't adjusted. It's that there's nothing to adjust to. You blink again, slower this time, almost experimentally, as if the act itself might change something. It doesn't. Your world remains the same, defined not by what you see, but by what you feel, what you hear, and what you imagine. And that last one becomes more powerful than you expect. You shift slightly, your body still pressed against the cold stone, your knees pulled in close. The position isn't ideal, but it's the one that costs the least energy to maintain, because already, without thinking about it, you started conserving. Your movements are slower, smaller, more deliberate. Not out of fear, but instinct. You inhale again, deeper this time, testing the air. Still heavy, still damp, still carrying that faint, stale scent that refuses to fully reveal itself. In many medieval dungeons, there were no windows at all, only narrow vents or small openings, if any. These weren't designed for comfort or visibility, but simply to allow minimal airflow and prevent complete suffocation. Historians still argue how effective these openings were, but most agree they did little to improve the overall environment. You feel that now. Because the air doesn't refresh, it lingers. Each breath feels like it's part of the same cycle, recycled over and over again. You exhale slowly, listening as the sound disappears almost immediately into the surrounding space. There's no echo, no bounce, just absorption, as if the darkness itself is swallowing everything. You tilt your head slightly, trying to orient yourself again. The dripping sound is still there, steady, reliable. It becomes your reference point, because without sight, your mind begins to build the space differently. You imagine the walls, the ceiling, the floor stretching out just far enough to contain you. You map it out slowly, piece by piece, using sound and touch instead of vision. And even then, it feels incomplete, because there's always something beyond what you can reach, something just outside your awareness. That uncertainty lingers, not sharply, but persistently. You shift your hand along the wall again, feeling its rough surface, tracing small cracks and uneven patches that tell you this place wasn't made with precision. It was made to last, to hold, to contain. A faint thought drifts through your mind, something oddly specific. In some medieval structures, dungeons were repurposed spaces, not originally designed for prisoners at all. Storage rooms, cellars, even old tunnels were sometimes converted into holding areas when needed. Historians still argue how standardized dungeon construction really was, but one thing is clear: consistency wasn't a priority. You pause, your fingers resting against the stone. That idea changes something, because it means this space wasn't necessarily designed with intention for comfort, or even for long-term use. It simply became what it is. And now, you're part of it. Another drip. And another. You begin to count them without meaning to. Not out of boredom, but because your mind needs something steady to hold on to. 1, pause. 2, pause. The rhythm isn't perfect. It shifts slightly, just enough to remind you that even this small constant isn't entirely reliable. You stop counting, because inconsistency makes it harder, not easier. Your breathing takes over again as your anchor. Slow, even, predictable. You follow it, letting each inhale and exhale guide your awareness. Because without time, you need rhythm. Something internal, something internal. You lean your head back against the wall, the cold pressing lightly against your skin, grounding you in the present moment. Your thoughts drift again, but more slowly now, less scattered, more focused. You think about how long you've been here, minutes, an hour. There's no way to tell, because nothing has changed, no light, no sound shift, no external marker, just the same unbroken experience. In some historical accounts, prisoners describe losing their sense of time completely after only a short period in total darkness. Without external cues, the brain struggles to maintain a consistent internal clock. Historians still argue how quickly this disorientation sets in, but the effect is well documented. And now, you feel the beginning of it. Not confusion, not yet, but a stretching. Moments feel longer than they should. Silences feel deeper. Everything expands. You shift again, slightly, your body responding more slowly now, more efficiently, because unnecessary movement feels wasteful. You don't know how long you'll need your energy, so you save it. Another faint sound reaches you. Not the drip. Something else. Subtle. A shift. You pause instantly. Listening. It doesn't repeat. Or maybe it does, too quietly to notice. You stay still, your awareness extending outward, trying to catch it again. Nothing. Just the drip. Just your breath. Just the quiet. You relax slightly, though not completely, because now you know this space isn't entirely predictable. You close your eyes again, not that it changes anything, and let your breathing guide you back into that steady rhythm. Inhale. Exhale. Time passes, or feels like it does, and your mind begins to settle further into this new way of experiencing the world, not through sight, but through sensation, through sound, through awareness. And as you sit there, your body still, your thoughts slower, your sense of time beginning to loosen its grip, you start to understand something important. You don't lose time here all at once. It slips, gradually, quietly, until one moment blends into the next, and you can't quite tell where one ends and the other begins. At first, you think you're getting used to the air. It doesn't feel as shocking as before, less intrusive somehow, like your body has quietly accepted it as the new normal. But then you take a slightly deeper breath and realize it hasn't improved. You've just adapted. The air still feels thick, as if it's carrying more than it should. There's a dampness to it that settles in your chest, making each inhale feel heavier than the last. Not painful, just noticeable. You exhale slowly, your breath warm against the cold space around you, and for a moment, you focus on that contrast. Warmth leaving, cold returning. It becomes a quiet cycle. You shift your shoulders slightly, rolling them back against the stone wall, trying to find a position that allows your lungs to expand more freely. It helps, a little, but not enough to ignore the underlying discomfort. In many medieval dungeons, airflow depended on narrow shafts or small openings placed high above, often blocked or restricted. These weren't designed with health in mind only, the bare minimum to keep a person alive. Historians still argue whether poor ventilation was deliberate punishment or simply a limitation of medieval engineering. But either way, it created an environment where the air itself became part of the challenge. You inhale again, slower this time, careful, measured, because breathing too quickly feels wasteful, like you're using up something limited. A strange thought, but it lingers. You tilt your head slightly, noticing how the air feels cooler near the wall, slightly warmer, closer to your body. Small differences, subtle, but real. Your senses are sharpening now, not because the environment is changing, but because you're paying closer attention. Because you have to. Another faint scent drifts through the air. You noticed it before, but now it feels clearer. Not stronger, just more defined. It's layered. Damp stone, yes. Old straw, but also something else, something harder to place. A faint sharpness, almost metallic. You pause, considering it. In some historical accounts, iron fixtures, chains, rings, and bars would rust over time in the damp conditions of underground spaces, releasing a subtle metallic scent into the air. Historians still argue how prominent this smell would have been, but it's often mentioned alongside descriptions of dungeon environments. You shift your hand again, brushing lightly along the wall until your fingers catch on something different. Not stone, colder, smoother, metal. You trace it carefully, feeling its shape sixed into the wall, unmoving. A ring, or a loop. Your hand pulls back instinctively, not out of fear exactly, but recognition. This place isn't just a room, it's a holding space. Designed to keep someone here. You exhale slowly, letting that thought settle without letting it grow too large. Because right now, thinking too far ahead doesn't help. You return your focus to your breathing again. Inhale, exhale. But now, there's a slight awareness with each breath, a subtle resistance. As if the air isn't quite as willing to move as it should. You adjust again, leaning forward slightly, trying to create more space in your chest. It helps for a moment, then fades. Your body responds by slowing everything down. Breathing becomes deeper but less frequent, more efficient, less waste. It's not something you decide to do, it just happens. Because your body understands something your mind is only beginning to catch up with. Energy matters here. Air matters. Every small thing matters. The dripping continues in the background, steady and indifferent. You listen to it again, letting it anchor you, but now it feels different. More distant somehow. Or maybe you're just more aware of everything else. A faint shift in the air brushes against your face, so slight you almost miss it. You pause. Waiting. It doesn't come again, but it leaves behind a question. Is there a draft? A tiny movement of air from somewhere beyond your reach? Or was it just your imagination? Historians still argue whether most dungeons had consistent airflow, or if conditions varied wildly from place to place. And right now, you can't tell which one you're in. You lean your head back again, letting it rest against the stone, your eyes closed. Not that it changes anything. Your thoughts drift again, slower now, more spaced out, because your mind is conserving energy too, letting go of anything unnecessary, focusing only on what matters. Breath, sound, sensation. You notice how your body feels heavier than before. Not weaker, just slower, as if everything is operating at a reduced pace. You shift your fingers slightly, feeling the roughness of the stone, the faint dampness that clings to it. It's constant, unchanging, like everything else here. Another breath. Inhale. Exhale. The air still feels wrong, but less surprising, less intrusive, because you're beginning to accept it, not as something temporary, but as something you have to work with. And that realization changes something subtle but important, because once you stop expecting things to improve, you start focusing on how to endure them instead. You adjust your posture again, finding a slightly more stable position, one that requires less effort to maintain. Your body settles into it slowly, naturally. The cold is still there. The darkness is still complete. The air is still heavy. But now, you're working with it, not against it. And as your breathing steadies, your thoughts quiet, and your senses sharpen just enough to navigate this space without sight, you begin to understand something deeper. Survival here isn't about strength. It's about adaptation. Quiet, steady, unremarkable adaptation. The kind that happens so slowly you barely notice it, until you realize you've already changed. You keep waiting for your eyes to help. It's a quiet expectation, almost automatic, the idea that if you just give it enough time, the darkness will soften, shapes will emerge, and the space will begin to make sense visually. But it doesn't. Not even a little. You blink again, slower now, more deliberate, as if testing a theory you already know the answer to. Nothing changes. There are no outlines, no shadows, no difference between open eyes and closed ones. And that realization settles in more deeply than anything so far, because it means you can't rely on something you've trusted your entire life. Vision is gone. Not damaged, just useless here. You lift your hand again, more out of habit than hope, moving it slowly in front of your face. You feel the motion, but you don't see it. It's as if your body exists in one layer of reality and your awareness in another. disconnected. You lower your hand, letting it rest against your knee, and exhale softly. This is something you'll have to accept. Not fight, not question. Just accept. In many medieval dungeons, especially those deep below ground, natural light simply didn't reach the cells at all. Torches might be used when guards entered, but for long stretches of time, prisoners experienced complete darkness. Historians still argue how often light was introduced, but most accounts agree it was rare and never consistent. You feel that now, because there's no hint of light anywhere. No cracks, no distant glow, just uninterrupted blackness. Your mind reacts in subtle ways. At first, it tries to compensate, to create something where there is nothing. You think you see a faint shape, a slight difference in darkness, but when you focus on it, it disappears, because it was never there. Just your brain trying to fill the void. You shift slightly, your body moving carefully, your senses more alert now that one of them has been completely removed from the equation. You rely more on touch, on sound, on the position of your own body. You press your palm against the wall again, grounding yourself in something real, something tangible. The rough texture confirms your position, your orientation. Without it, the space would feel even more uncertain. A strange thought crosses your mind, something almost unsettling in its simplicity. In prolonged darkness, people sometimes begin to imagine shapes, lights, or movement that doesn't exist. Not because they're losing control, but because the brain isn't designed to process nothing. Historians still argue how quickly these effects appear, but even short exposure can create subtle illusions. You pause, letting that idea settle, because you've already felt it. That moment where your mind tried to create something, and you realize you'll need to stay aware of that, to recognize the difference between what's real and what your mind is trying to add. You adjust your posture again, your movements slow, deliberate, conserving energy without conscious effort. Your world has narrowed now, not physically, but perceptually. You no longer think about what things look like, only how they feel, how they sound, where they are in relation to you. The dripping continues, steady, predictable. It becomes more important now, because it's one of the few external references you have left. You tilt your head slightly, listening more closely. The sound hasn't changed, but your perception of it has. It feels sharper, clearer, more defined, because your attention is no longer divided. Another faint sound reaches you, different from the drip. You freeze instantly, listening. It's subtle, a shift, a soft movement, then nothing. You hold still, your breathing controlled, your focus extending outward. Was it real or another illusion? You wait, a few seconds, maybe longer. Then, a faint repeat, not identical, but similar enough. Your body remains still, but your awareness sharpens, because this time it doesn't feel like your imagination. It feels external. You don't move, you don't react, you just listen. The sound doesn't come again immediately, but it lingers in your mind, because now your environment feels slightly larger than it did before. Not just a small cell, but part of something more, something that extends beyond your immediate reach. You exhale slowly, letting your body relax just a fraction, though your awareness stays heightened, because without sight, every other sense becomes more important, more relied upon. You close your eyes again, not because it changes anything, but because it helps you focus inward. Your breathing steadies, your thoughts slow, and your mind begins to adapt further. You stop expecting visual confirmation, stop waiting for light, stop hoping for something that isn't coming. And that acceptance changes something fundamental, because once you stop expecting sight to return, you stop wasting energy on it. You become more efficient, more focused, more present. And as you sit there, your world defined by sound, touch, and internal awareness, you begin to understand something important. Losing sight here isn't just a physical limitation. It's a shift in how you experience reality itself. And adapting to that shift is something you don't have a choice about. It's something you have to do, quietly, gradually, until it becomes normal. The silence isn't empty. At first it feels that way, thick, still, almost comforting in how little it demands from you. But the longer you sit with it, the more you realize it's not silence at all. It's layered, subtle, alive in a way that takes time to notice. You sit very still, your back against the cold wall, your breathing slow and measured, and as your body settles, your ears begin to do more of the work. The drip is still there, steady, predictable, but now it's no longer alone. There are smaller sounds hiding beneath it. A faint scrape, so light you almost dismiss it. Then a pause. Then something like a shift. Not loud, not sudden, just enough to exist. You don't move, because movement feels like it might interrupt something, like you might miss it if you adjust even slightly. You tilt your head just a little, listening harder. The space seems to stretch outward as your awareness reaches beyond what you can touch. Another faint sound. There. You heard it. This time, you're sure. It doesn't repeat immediately, but the memory of it lingers. Your mind begins to map possibilities. Stone settling. Water moving somewhere unseen. Or something else. In many medieval dungeons, sound traveled in unpredictable ways. Thick stone walls didn't absorb everything, they redirected it, bounced it, warped it. A noise from one cell could seem like it came from another entirely. Historians still argue how disorienting this effect was for prisoners, but most agree it made it difficult to trust what you heard. You feel that now, because you can't pinpoint where the sound came from. Left, right, ahead, behind. It doesn't align with your expectations, and that uncertainty makes you listen even more closely. You shift your hand slightly, fingers brushing the wall again, grounding yourself in something physical while your ears stay focused on the space beyond. Another sound. Softer this time, almost like fabric or skin against stone. Your breath slows further, because now the possibility becomes clearer. You're not alone. You knew that in a distant way. A logical assumption, but hearing it is different. It turns an idea into something real. You remain still, your body instinctively minimizing movement, as if silence itself is something you need to respect. You consider speaking. The thought comes quickly. A simple word, a question, but you stop it just as quickly, because once you break the silence, you invite a response, and you don't know what that response might be. So you wait, listening. Another faint shift, then nothing. The quiet stretches again, longer this time, wrapping around you in a way that feels heavier than before, because now it's not just your silence, it's shared. A strange thought drifts into your mind, something almost comforting. In some historical accounts, prisoners communicated through walls or shared spaces using taps, whispers, or even small repeated sounds. Simple signals, not language, just presence. Historians still argue how common this was, but enough evidence exists to suggest it happened. Because even in isolation, people look for connection. You hesitate for a moment, then, slowly, you tap. Just once. Soft. Careful. The sound feels louder than it should. It travels into the space, disappearing quickly, but leaving behind a tension you can feel. You freeze immediately after, your body still, your breathing controlled. Waiting. Nothing. No response. You exhale slowly, your shoulders relaxing just a fraction. Maybe you imagined it. Maybe the sounds were just the dungeon itself. Then a faint noise. Not a tap. Not a clear answer. But something. A movement. A shift. Subtle. But unmistakably not yours. You don't move. You don't tap again. You just listen. Because that's enough. Confirmation. Presence. Another person. Somewhere close. Somewhere in the same darkness. The realization doesn't bring fear. Not immediately. Instead, it brings something else. Awareness. Because now, your environment has changed, not physically, but perceptually. You're no longer alone in it, and that affects everything. The silence feels different. The darkness feels deeper. Even the air seems heavier, because it's shared. You lean your head back slightly, your posture still controlled, your energy conserved. Another faint sound reaches you, this time softer, almost like a breath, uneven, then gone. You swallow slowly, your throat dry, your mind processing what that means. They're still there, still present, still enduring the same conditions you are. A quiet connection forms, not through words, not through sight, but through shared experience. You tap again, lightly. A pause. Then a response, faint, but clear enough. You don't try to create a pattern, not yet. This isn't communication, not really. It's acknowledgement. You exist. So do they. That's enough. For now, you settle back into stillness, your body relaxing slightly, your mind adjusting to this new layer of awareness. The dungeon hasn't changed. The cold remains. The darkness is still absolute. The air still feels wrong, but something inside you has shifted. Because even in isolation, you found a thread, thin, fragile, but real. And as you sit there, listening to the faint echoes of another presence moving somewhere just beyond your reach, you begin to understand something important. Silence here isn't empty. It's full of things you can't see, things you can barely hear, things your mind has to piece together slowly. And once you start hearing them, you can't go back. The idea stays with you. Not just that someone else is here, but that they're close enough to hear, close enough to respond. And that changes how you sit in the silence. You're more aware now, not tense, not afraid, just attentive. Because the space is no longer just something you endure, it's something you share. You keep your movements minimal, your breathing steady, your focus split between your own body and a faint presence beyond your reach. For a while, nothing happens, just the drip, just your breath, just the quiet weight of the air, and then a soft tap, not yours. You feel it more than hear it at first, a slight vibration carried through the stone. You freeze, listening. It comes again. Light, careful, intentional. You don't react immediately. You let a moment pass, your mind deciding what this means, how to respond, whether to respond at all. Because now it feels different. Before it was confirmation, now it feels like an invitation. You lift your hand slowly and tap once. Gentle, measured. You wait. There's a pause, long enough that you begin to wonder if you imagined the first sound entirely. Then a reply. 2 taps, not matching yours, but not random either. You tilt your head slightly, your mind already trying to interpret meaning where there may not be any. Pattern. Or coincidence. You don't know, and maybe it doesn't matter, because the act itself is enough. A quirky thought drifts into your awareness, something oddly structured. In certain historical accounts, prisoners developed basic tapping systems to communicate through walls. Not full languages, but simple codes, numbers, letters, or repeated signals. Historians still argue how widespread or effective these systems were, but they appear often enough to suggest one thing: people tried. Even here, you tap again. Once. Pause. Once more. A simple rhythm. You're not trying to say anything, just offering something back. There's a delay, then a response. Not identical, not mirrored, but present, and that presence begins to settle into something more familiar. You continue like this for a while, small taps, spaced out, irregular, without clear meaning. But over time, a rhythm begins to form. Not a language. Not yet, just consistency. A back and forth. Something shared. Your body relaxes slightly as it continues. Not completely, but enough. Because the uncertainty has shifted into something more defined. You're not guessing anymore, you're interacting. And that changes the experience. The cold is still there, the hunger still lingers, the air hasn't improved. But your focus isn't entirely inward anymore. It's divided, shared, and that makes everything feel lighter, not physically, but mentally. You lean your head back against the wall again, your hand resting beside you, ready, but still. The tapping slows, then stops, not abruptly, just gradually, as if both of you reach the same unspoken understanding at the same time. Enough. For now. You don't try to continue it, because there's something important about letting it fade naturally. Forcing it might break whatever fragile balance has formed. You sit in the quiet again, but now it feels different, less empty, less isolating, because even without sound, you know the connection is still there. Somewhere, just beyond your reach. In many medieval dungeons, prisoners were often held separately, but within close proximity. Walls were thick, but not always enough to fully isolate sound, allowing for occasional communication between cells. Historians still argue whether this was intentional or incidental, but for those inside, it became something meaningful. You understand that now, because even the smallest interaction can shift your entire experience. You shift your posture slightly, your movements slow, deliberate. Your body feels heavier than before, not dramatically, just enough to notice. Energy conserving itself. Your breathing remains steady, your mind calmer than it was earlier, because now you have something to anchor to beyond your own thoughts. You close your eyes again, letting your awareness settle. The drip continues, the air remains thick, the cold seeps in, but none of it feels as overwhelming as it did before, because you're not carrying it alone. Even if you never see the other person, even if you never speak, even if the connection remains nothing more than occasional taps in the dark, it matters. And as you sit there, your body still, your mind quieter, your senses tuned to the subtle rhythm of this shared silence, you begin to understand something important. Survival here isn't just about enduring environment. It's about holding on to something human, connection, even in its smallest form. Because without that, the silence would feel very different, much heavier, much harder to carry. And as the last faint echo of that earlier tapping fades into the background, blending with the steady drip and your slow, measured breathing, you hold on to that thread, because here, even the smallest thread can make a difference. The connection fades, but it doesn't disappear. It lingers in the background of your awareness, like an echo that never fully leaves, even after the sound itself is gone. You sit quietly, your body still, your breathing steady, and that's when you notice it again, that slow, quiet pull from somewhere deeper inside you. Hunger. At first it's subtle, almost easy to ignore, just a slight emptiness. A quiet reminder. You shift your position slightly, adjusting your weight, trying to focus on something else. The drip, the air, the faint presence beyond your wall. But your body doesn't let it go, because it doesn't need to be loud to be persistent. It just needs time. In many medieval dungeons, food wasn't provided regularly. Prisoners might receive small portions of bread or thin broth, sometimes once a day, sometimes less, depending on their status or the attention of their captors. Historians still argue how consistent these practices were, but one thing appears often: to sustenance was never guaranteed. You feel that uncertainty now, not as fear, but as awareness, because you don't know when or if food is coming. You swallow slowly, your throat dry, your mouth offering no relief. The air doesn't help. If anything, it makes the dryness more noticeable. You run your tongue along your teeth, searching for moisture that isn't there. Nothing changes. You lean forward slightly, resting your elbows on your knees, your body naturally shifting into a position that conserves energy. Because hunger changes how you move, how you think, how you prioritize. Another faint sound reaches you, a small shift, that other presence. You pause, listening, then tap once, soft, careful. A response comes after a moment, still there, still present. And for a brief moment your attention shifts away from your own discomfort, because now you're aware of something else. They're feeling this too, the same hunger, the same uncertainty. A quiet understanding passes between you, unspoken, but real. A strange, almost out-of-place thought drifts into your mind. In some historical accounts, prisoners would mentally divide food they hadn't even received, yet imagining how they would eat it slowly, stretching each bite as far as possible. Historians still argue whether this was common behavior or just isolated examples, but the idea makes sense, because when something is uncertain, your mind tries to prepare for it anyway. You catch yourself doing something similar, thinking about food, not in detail, not a specific meal, just the idea of it, warmth, texture, substance, something to break the emptiness. You shift slightly, trying to move away from the thought, but it lingers, because now that it's there, it doesn't leave easily. Your stomach tightens, not sharply, just enough to remind you, constant, steady. You take a slow breath, then another, focusing on that rhythm again. Inhale, exhale, because breathing is something you can control. Hunger isn't. You adjust your posture again, leaning back slightly, letting your body settle into stillness once more. Less movement, less energy. Your body understands this now, even if your mind is still catching up. The drip continues. The air remains thick, the cold presses in, and the hunger slowly deepens. It doesn't spike, it doesn't demand, it just grows, gradually, until it becomes part of everything else. Another faint tap reaches you, you respond. One tap, pause, A return. Still there, that thread again, thin, fragile, but enough. You close your eyes briefly, letting your thoughts settle, your awareness narrowing to the essentials. Because that's what this place does. It strips everything down, removes distractions, leaves you with only what matters: breath, sensation, presence, and the quiet realization of your own limits. You shift your hand slightly, brushing against the damp straw again, the uneven ground beneath it. Still the same, unchanged. Like everything else, you lean your head back against the wall, your body heavier now, your movement slower, your energy more carefully managed. And in that stillness, you begin to understand something important. Hunger isn't just physical here, it's mental. It shapes your thoughts, pulls your attention inward, makes everything feel more immediate, more focused, and surviving it isn't about making it go away, because you can't. It's about letting it exist without letting it take over. And as you sit there, your breathing steady, your body still, your awareness balanced between your own needs and the faint presence beyond your wall, you hold that balance carefully, because losing it would make everything harder, much harder. The hunger settles in, becoming part of the background. Not gone, just accepted. And as your focus shifts away from it, something else begins to take its place. The ground beneath you, you've been sitting on it this entire time, feeling its cold, its unevenness, its dampness, but now, as your body grows heavier and your movements slow, you become more aware of it, more aware of what it really is. You move your hand carefully across the surface again. The stone is rough, worn, not flat in the way you'd expect, but shaped by time, by use, by whatever has happened here before you arrived. Your fingers trace small dips, shallow cracks, places where moisture is gathered and settled. Cold pockets, colder than the rest. You shift your weight slightly. Immediately, you feel the pressure change. Your body doesn't rest evenly. One side presses harder, another lifts slightly. There's no comfort here, only positions that are less uncomfortable. In many medieval dungeons, floors weren't designed with any thought of comfort or sanitation. They were simply the foundation stone laid to last, not to support the people forced to sit on it. Historians still argue how often these spaces were maintained or cleaned, but most accounts suggest very little attention was given to such things. You feel that neglect now, clearly. You hesitate before moving your hand further, because you've already noticed something: the straw, or what remains of it. You gather a small section of it slowly, pulling it closer, testing its texture. It's soft, in a way that doesn't feel clean. Damp. Clumped together in places. You press it lightly between your fingers. It gives, but not in a reassuring way. You stop for a moment, because your mind fills in the rest. What's been here before? What this straw has absorbed? You don't need confirmation. You release it slowly, wiping your hand lightly against your clothing out of instinct, even though you know it doesn't really change anything. Because here, everything is shared with the environment, the ground, the air, the surfaces. There's no separation. A strange, almost practical thought comes to you. In some historical accounts, prisoners would try to gather and rearrange straw into small piles, attempting to create a slightly drier or softer place to sit or lie down. It rarely worked for long. The dampness always returned. Historians still argue how effective these efforts were, but the instinct itself is clear. You try it anyway. Slowly, carefully, you pull more of the straw toward you, layering it beneath where you sit, building a slightly thicker cushion between your body and the stone. It's not much, but it's something. You shift your weight again, testing it. Better. Slightly. The cold doesn't disappear. The unevenness remains. But the direct contact with the stone is reduced just enough to notice. You settle into it, your body adjusting, your posture becoming more stable, less strain, less pressure. It's a small improvement. But here, small improvements matter. Another faint sound reaches you. That presence again. A quiet movement. You pause, listening, then tap lightly once more. A response follows after a moment. Still there, still connected. You don't continue the pattern. You just acknowledge it. Because that's enough. You lean your head back again, your eyes closed, your body slowly relaxing into this slightly adjusted position. The ground is still damp, still unclean, still unforgiving, but now you've found a way to exist on it with a little less strain. And that changes how your body feels. Your muscles release just a fraction. Your breathing steadies more easily. Your energy drains more slowly. Because discomfort, even when it's constant, can be managed if you find the right balance. You shift your hand again, resting it lightly on the straw, feeling its texture without exploring further. Because you don't need to know more than you already do. Knowing more won't improve the situation, it will only make it harder to ignore. The drip continues, the air remains heavy, the cold presses in from every direction. But now, your body is more settled, more stable. And your mind follows that stability. Because physical discomfort and mental strain are connected here. One feeds into the other. Reduce one even slightly, and the other becomes easier to handle. You take a slow breath, then another, your awareness narrowing again to the essentials. Breath, sound, sensation. Everything else fades, or at least becomes less important. Time continues to pass, though you still can't measure it. And your body adjusts further to this position, this environment, this constant state of mild discomfort. You no longer react to every sensation. You let them exist, without resistance. Because resisting doesn't change them. It only adds effort, and effort costs energy. You conserve, you adapt, you endure. And as you sit there, your body supported just enough by the damp straw beneath you, your mind calmer, your awareness steady, you begin to understand something important. Survival here isn't about finding comfort, because there isn't any. It's about reducing discomfort where you can, even in the smallest ways, because those small changes add up, and sometimes they're the difference between holding steady and slipping further into exhaustion. Just when your body begins to settle into that fragile balance, something changes, not gradually, not subtly, but enough to break the rhythm you've built. At first, it's barely noticeable, a faint disturbance in the quiet, like the air itself has shifted slightly. Then you hear it, a step, distant, heavy, measured. You freeze instantly, your body reacting before your mind fully processes it. Another step. Closer this time, the sound doesn't echo sharply. Instead, it travels through the stone in a dull, steady way, solid, controlled, unmistakable. Someone is moving through the dungeon. Your breathing slows without you trying. Your posture tightens, pulling inward, making yourself smaller, quieter, as if that might make a difference. The steps continue. Slow, deliberate, each one spaced just far enough apart to stretch your awareness thin. You listen carefully, trying to track the direction. But like everything else here, sound refuses to behave the way you expect. It doesn't come from a single point. It spreads, reflects, reaches you from angles that don't quite make sense. In many medieval dungeons, guards would move through corridors at irregular intervals, checking cells, delivering food, or simply maintaining presence. There wasn't always a fixed schedule, which made their movements unpredictable. Historians still argue how structured these routines were, but one thing appears consistently: uncertainty was part of the experience. You feel that now, because you don't know what this means. Are they coming closer, passing by, stopping somewhere near? Your mind begins to fill in possibilities again, faster this time, sharper. You remain still, completely still, because movement now feels like something you should avoid. The steps slow, then stop, close, not directly in front of you, but near enough that you can feel the presence behind them. A pause follows, long, heavy. You hold your breath without meaning to, your body instinctively quieting itself further. Then, a faint metallic sound. Soft, distinct, keys. The sound is unmistakable. The subtle clink of metal against metal. The slight shift as they move. It cuts through the silence more clearly than anything else you've heard so far. Authority. Control. The structure of this place revealing itself again. You don't move. You don't even shift your weight, because now every small action feels like it could be noticed. Another sound. A lock. Not yours. Somewhere nearby. You hear it clearly, the turning mechanism, the resistance, the final click. Then a door opens. Slowly. Heavily. The sound doesn't rush. It drags slightly, as if the door itself carries weight, as if it hasn't moved easily in a long time. There's a pause. No voices, no clear interaction, just the presence of something happening beyond your reach. Then the door closes. Another click, another lock. The steps resume, moving again, away this time, slow, measured, fading gradually into the distance. You don't move immediately. You stay still, your body holding onto that tension just a little longer, as if releasing it too quickly might bring the sound back. The dungeon settles again. The drip returns to the forefront. Your breathing becomes the loudest thing you can hear. But the silence isn't the same. Because now you know something. This place isn't forgotten. It isn't abandoned. It's controlled, managed, observed. Someone knows you're here. Someone can reach you. And that realization shifts everything. The darkness no longer feels endless. It feels contained. The silence no longer feels absolute. It feels interrupted. You exhale slowly, your body relaxing just a fraction. Your muscles releasing some of the tension they held. But not all of it, because part of you remains alert now. Listening. Waiting. Another faint tap reaches you. That familiar presence. You respond instinctively. One tap. Gentle. There's a pause. Then a reply. Still there. Still connected. And somehow that connection feels different now. Stronger. Because it exists within the same awareness. You both heard it. The steps. The keys. The reminder. You're not alone here. Not just with each other, but within a system that surrounds you both. A system you can't see, but can definitely feel. You lean back slowly, your head resting against the wall again, your breathing steadying. Your body feels heavier now, more tired, more aware of its limits, and your mind begins to process something deeper. Survival here isn't just about enduring the environment, it's about understanding your place within it. What you can control, what you can't, because the environment doesn't respond to you, but the system might. And as you sit there, the memory of those footsteps still echoing faintly in your mind, blending with the steady drip and your slow, measured breathing, you begin to understand something important. This place isn't just something you're inside, it's something that holds you. And every sound is a reminder of that. After the footsteps fade, the silence returns, but it doesn't feel the same anymore. It's heavier now. Defined. As if the space itself has been outlined by what you just heard. You sit still, your back against the wall,